What is up, guys? Thank you for joining me on my countdown to Endgame, where I'll be talking about the 21 MCU movies leading into Avengers Endgame coming out this month. And for today's segment, I'm going over Thor, the fourth installment of the MCU. With the Thor series, it's very interesting, at least for me. Emotion-wise, I felt different vibes for each movie. This Thor movie was I thought it was alright. It was a good Thor movie in regards to the origin story. Then you have Thor Dark World, which I thought was one of the weaker MCU movies, and then Thor Ragnarok came around a few years ago, and I thought that was one of the best MCU movies. So definitely a roller coaster for me emotion-wise, but this one is of course the origin of Thor. We get to find out who he is, and honestly, he's a character that it was appropriate to have in Phase 1 as one of the leading origin characters, because one, he's one of the original characters, and two, this is the movie that opens the door outside of the realm of Earth into a more cosmic mythology type of world that we never explored until this point. Now, the story of Thor is pretty much based off of Norse mythology. In the movie, it's based in Asgard, where Odin is king. His son is Thor, which is the god of thunder, and he has an adopted brother, Loki, which is the god of mischief. So the story of Thor in this movie, he's pretty much arrogant, misbehaves, go against orders, very spoiled, and he's the prince destined to become the next king. When he goes against orders and fights against the frost giants, his father finds out, gets angry, banishes and exiles him to Earth, stripping away all of his powers, taking away the power of his hammer, and now he has to prove himself worthy to get those powers back. So the movie stars Chris Hemsworth as Thor. You have Natalie Portman playing Jane Foster, Tom Hiddleston is Loki, and Odin is played by Anthony Hopkins. The movie is directed by Kenneth Branagh, and some of you that are movie buffs may recognize his name. He is a well-known British actor and director, and most of the movies he has directed or starred in had like this William Shakespeare vibe, or they were based off of William Shakespeare plays. So this movie, even though it's not William Shakespeare, it has that vibe. It has the British actors, it has that type of elegance to it, very almost regal, especially when they're in Asgard. So it's a movie that definitely fit him, and if you watch his movies, it blends well with his other films. So with Chris Hemsworth, this is my fun fact for this one, Daniel Craig was originally offered the role of Thor.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
And it went as far as him almost filming for this, but I guess he declined. Something happened to where he couldn't do it anymore. And during this time, he was making The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which was released the same year as Thor, and then the next year he did Skyfall. So maybe it was due to these obligations why he didn't do it, but I think it worked out for the best, because we see Daniel Craig as a definite James Bond, and Chris Hemsworth is a great Thor. So if the roles were reversed, I don't know if I can see Daniel Craig as Thor. Maybe I can see Chris Hemsworth as James Bond, but that's how it ended up being, and I think it worked for the best for both franchises. Now, in regards to connection with the rest of the MCU, this movie does have quite a bit. For one, like I mentioned before, this movie goes outside the realm of Earth into a more cosmic territory, and in this case, it's Asgard. You go into the 9 realms based on Norse mythology, and come to find out that that's all factual. And then beyond that, we end up going into more deeper space with Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain Marvel, but this opens the door to that. And on top of that, towards the post-credits scene, you do see a scene with Dr. Selvig. He is pretty much being possessed by Loki, and Fury introduces to him the Tesseract, which we come to find out is the first of the 6 Infinity Stones.
Legend tells us one thing, history another. But every now and then we find something that belongs to both. Power, Doctor. If we can figure out how to tap it, maybe unlimited power.
Well, I guess that's worth a look.
So the Tesseract becomes pretty important, especially in Infinity War and Endgame. But this isn't the first time some of these characters have seen the Tesseract. In Captain America, which precedes Thor, is technically the first time that it is seen on Earth. But here in Thor, it's being in the post-credit scene, it is on Earth, but this is years later. In regards to the connection to Endgame, that's how this movie technically connects to it, with it being on the Infinity Stones, even though it's later on revealed where it originally came from. In regards to this movie connecting other ways to the Endgame, I can only say the same thing that I said about the last few movies with Iron Man and with Hulk, being that these movies are so far apart from Endgame that there's only so much you can say about these characters, considering they're their first phase 1 part of the Avengers. So most of these characters we're not going to see anymore in the future Avengers movies and the rest of the MCU. And here with Thor, I don't know if Chris Hemsworth, if his contract is up for this movie or not, and if it is, I feel someone else is going to replace the character of Thor. Rumors are going around that Valkyrie will eventually take the role of Thor. So if this is true, there's something that's going to happen to Thor if there's this time travel theory that's true, going back in time and once again sacrificing his life or changing something to the fact to where Asgard is never destroyed in the case of Ragnarok, which I'll mention later on when I talk about that movie. So maybe there's a point where he never disobeyed orders and he became eventually the king of Asgard. All in all, this is a fun movie. It's probably one of the better movies in phase 1 of the MCU. And it's going to be sad if we don't see more of Thor later on in the future after Endgame, if Endgame wipes out some of these characters, if he is one of the ones that his destiny is changed because of the outcome of that movie. But we have these movies to look back on, more so the first one and the third one. But this one's just a fun, good movie, good action, and good acting, and it's just a good overall addition to the MCU as a whole. And that was my thoughts on Thor. I hope you all enjoyed that. For my next video, I will be doing Captain America: The First Avenger, which is one of my personal favorites in the beginning of the MCU. In the meantime, tell me in the comments below, what do y'all think of Thor? Is it your favorite out of the 3? Is it your favorite in the MCU, or even in your favorite in the phase 1? I'd love to hear your opinions because everyone has a different one. Share with anyone else that wants to hear about this segment that I'm doing and that are as excited about Endgame as much as I am. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, tell others to subscribe. I hope you all enjoyed hearing from me. I hope you look forward to hearing me again. You all have a great week, and I will see you all at the movies.